This is estate planning lawyer Michael Pevney, and in this video we are going to talk about how often and under what circumstances you might need to update your estate plan. But before that, if you are interested in estate planning and want more information, you can subscribe to this channel, and if you live in California, you can set up a time to meet with me for free by following the link in the description or going to ocestateplanlawyer.com. So a lot of times when I'm creating estate plans for my clients, they'll ask me, how often do we need to update this thing? Like, is it every couple of years, or what do we do and how do we do that? So first, we want to think about some big life changes. And the big four life changes would be birth, death, marriage, and divorce. And not all of these we need to necessarily alter or change an estate plan, but it's always a good time to think about how things may have changed when any of these things happen. So first, birth. A lot of times I have young families, I have families that don't have kids yet but are planning on having kids in the future, do this, and it's always a good idea to let the attorney know if you have another kid that's born. Now, a trust, a living trust, which I create for most of my clients, can be written in such a way that it can accommodate and it can handle additional kids, and it can make them a part of the plan. It can make them beneficiaries by basically giving things equally to them, either in trust or outright when they hit a certain age. And for my clients that either don't have kids yet but are planning on it, or have a couple kids and there's even a slight possibility that there might be, that obviously is a very personal and delicate conversation that I have with my clients, which is why the attorney-client relationship is a very personal one and a very private one. But yeah, you got to have those conversations about whether, there are going to be any more kids coming along in the future. But even if it accommodates for that, birth of a new child might affect how you want your plan to look. Always good to check in about that. Death, of course, is very important. When somebody dies, if you create an estate plan along with a spouse, if a spouse passes away, yes, there are things that have to be done. We may need to update some things, put some new things in there, make you the sole trustee of real estate and other financial accounts and things like that. Look at your planning for the future. Have you gotten a little bit older? Might you need some more help or a trustee to help you out? So when somebody passes away, yes, that's always a good idea. Marriage. So if we have kids that get married or we ourselves get married, but we've already created an estate plan, yes, it's always a good time to check in. Especially one of the big things we always want to update a trust or take a look at our estate plan is if our child marries somebody that we're not necessarily that crazy about. In that way, we want to make sure that in the case that that relationship breaks up, that this spouse that we're not that crazy of, this new in-law, doesn't end up with any of the money from our trust, that it either stays with our child, is used for their benefit, or is used for the forthcoming grandchildren, that it essentially stays in the bloodline. And similarly with divorce, right? If we create an estate plan with our spouse and we put the house in it that we bought together when we were married, and we've been married for a long time and earned most of our income together and created retirement accounts and things like that, a divorce pretty much calls everything off. I mean, the trust is pretty much going to be done unless you had some sort of prenuptial agreement or maybe you created separate trusts when you got married. If you create a joint trust, which most married couples do, and which I advise for most married couples, you're pretty much going to have to start the estate plan again from scratch. So divorce is, you really are going to have to update that. Then the other bit, so those are the four big life events that might prompt looking at an estate plan, whether we might need to change it, update it, or just have a look-see at it. So birth, death, marriage, divorce. And then the second big thing that we really don't have control over is changes in the law. Oftentimes these are tax law changes, and these are real specific to your state and your situation. So for example, in California a couple years ago, we had a recent change to our property tax law, and it was called Prop 19. And property taxes for residences in California are a very big deal because Property is very valuable and it often goes up in value, and the property tax is tied to the value of the real estate, and we want to avoid reassessing that property tax for as long as we can. And estate planning can be an effective way of doing that, much better than the way some people do it, like just putting your kid on the deed to the house. And that's one of these things that has been affected by some of these property tax changes. So changes in tax law, so that's one specific thing. And another thing is if your estate is large, if you're getting into the 5 million, 10 million and beyond range, then you're gonna have to start talking about federal level estate taxes. And your taxable estate includes real estate, retirement funds, and even life insurance proceeds. So there is going to be a resetting of the federal estate tax limit or exemption from, as a married couple right now, it's in 2023, it's going to be quite high. It's getting close to about $26 million. And it's going to be, it's all tied to inflation and what the value of certain money was a number of years ago, but it's more or less going to be cut in half in the next several years. And so people with that with that level of income of that $5 to $10 million range that might be looking at a federal estate tax, that's something that you might need to contact your estate planning lawyer about. There are all sorts of things that can be done to both avoid some of those taxes and achieve your goals. Some very complicated, some not so complicated estate tax planning strategies to do that. Also important to note, I practice in California. We do not have a state estate or death tax, but there are some states that do, and they're at a much lower level than that $26 million level. I know states like the state of Washington has one that's just a couple $1 million that hits a lot of middle class people, especially if you have owned a home for a long time. So those are really the big times that we need to think about changing or updating an estate plan. The big life events: birth, death, marriage, divorce, and any big law changes, specifically tax law, specifically if you have an estate that might be taxable or you own property in California and you don't want to have that property reassessed. If you've got questions about this or anything else related to estate planning, you can ask it in the comments. I'm usually pretty good about getting back to them. Please subscribe to this channel for more estate planning information, and thanks for watching.